Today, we are going to be talking about how to make a plan for your applications. We're going to touch on three different things. We're going to talk about how to make a plan for your LSAT and for studying. We're going to talk about how to make a plan for your letters of recommendation. And we're going to be talking about how to make a plan for your essays. So, let's dive in. How to make a plan for your law school application process this cycle. And I think this is really important and really crucial because everything takes time and the different parts of your application take a different amount of time, but you want to be preparing and planning ahead. If you wake up in July and say, okay, I want to start the law school application process now, you aren't really going to have enough time to submit your applications in September or October, which is when I recommend submitting your applications so that you can best maximize your law school application process, your acceptances, and your scholarships. You want to be submitting your applications in the fall so that you have your best chance of getting the offers that you want. And if you don't prepare beforehand, your likelihood of being able to submit your applications in the fall drastically decreases. Now, of course, and you've heard me talk about this on other videos, there are three different stages of the law school application process. You can apply early in the cycle, which is in September or October. And even like November, you can apply kind of on time, which is that late November to January timeframe. And then you can apply kind of late in the cycle, which is anything after February. And I've discussed the benefits of applying early and also why you're not really giving yourself your best shot at law school admissions. Even if you're applying to hybrid programs or part-time programs, applying late in the cycle really does not help you. It doesn't help you with acceptances, and it doesn't help you in terms of getting the scholarship money that you want to go to those schools so that you're not paying full freight. But so let's talk about what it would look like to try to apply early in the cycle, to try to apply in September or October. So what does it look like to try to apply in September and October? Well, if you want to try to apply in September and October, then you really do need to give yourself at least 3 to 9 months, first off, to study for the LSAT. So we're going to talk about that first point. What is the plan that you need to make for your LSAT studying? You need at least 3 to 9 months to study for the LSAT. I don't really care who you are. At a minimum, 3 months. And that would be 3 months studying 3 hours a day. And then some people do need 9 months, even a year of studying. So realistically, if you say, I want to get my applications in September, when do you need to get your LSAT studying and your preparations ready? I would say in January is when I would take an LSAT diagnostic test. And again, I know that you've heard me talk about LSAT diagnostic tests before. What they are is it's a practice test. It's a free practice test. You can take a free one on Khan Academy has one. A few other test prep companies have free diagnostic exams. And that is to give you a baseline score. That is so that you know how long you need to study. And I do recommend taking that really early. If you took it in January and your baseline score was a 156, and your goal score was a 165, then you know that you've got about 9 to 10 points there that you want to try to target, and you can make an appropriate LSAT plan based off of that. If your diagnostic score is a 145 and you want to get to a 165, well, then you know that you've got about 20 points to jump. And you are going to want to do a lot more studying, right? You're not going to be able to do that realistically in those 3 months. You're going to need at least 6 or 9 months. You're probably going to need to sign up for a course. You're probably going to need to get a tutor. And so we're talking about maybe budgeting for a course and budgeting for a tutor. We're talking about making sure that you have enough time to take the course, enough time to troubleshoot in case anything goes wrong. So you really do want to take a diagnostic as early as possible. So if you're listening to this right now and you're planning to apply to law school in the fall and you haven't yet taken an LSAT diagnostic test or a practice test, you haven't started studying for the LSAT, that's okay. I'm not telling you to go in and freak out, but you do want to get started on that. Like, what are you doing this weekend? The answer should be taking an LSAT diagnostic test. Um, in case it was like a quiz, that's the right answer. You should be taking an LSAT diagnostic test this weekend. You want to figure out where you are so that you can figure out where you're going. There's actually a video on my YouTube page, top 5 mistakes students make when studying for the LSAT. I did it with Mina Perrone, who is the owner of Logic Games Pro. We're really good friends. She's a fantastic LSAT Logic Games tutor. But we did a video on those top 5 mistakes that students make, and one of those is not taking a diagnostic test at the beginning of their studies. So let's say you've taken a diagnostic test and you're like, now what? Now you want to figure out when you're going to take the LSAT exam. So the LSAT exam, and I have the full list of the 2021 to 2022 LSAT exam dates on my Instagram. My Instagram is at Montgomery Consulting. You should definitely be following that. I post tips every week. I'm just trying to give you guys as much information as possible. So on there, I do list all of the LSAT 2021 to 2022 dates. And you'll see that the next kind of 3 tests coming up, there's a June test, there's an August test, and there's an October test, right? Those are kind of the next 3 test dates coming up. There's, usually a November test as well, and then it jumps to January. Now, at the beginning of this, I said I'm going to try to give you a timeline for applying early in the cycle, for applying in that for applying in that September through October, November timeframe, right? And so what that means is that you need to be taking the June or the August LSAT exam, maybe the October LSAT exam, to get in that September through November window. Those are the 3 test dates that are going to get you a test score that still allows you to apply relatively early in the cycle. So if you haven't started studying for the LSAT yet, I don't recommend taking the June LSAT because you don't have enough time. I told you it takes 3 to 9 months. We're only about 2 months away. That's just really not enough time. However, you can start targeting the August LSAT. And that is completely fine and totally acceptable in order to get your scores, in order to submit your applications in September through November. I will say that an important note is that the August LSAT changes format. The August LSAT is a different format than the June LSAT. For those of you who have been on this LSAT journey and following it for some time, you know that the June LSAT and the past kind of year of LSATs have been under this LSAT Flex. And what that means is that the LSAT used to have 5 sections, 2 sections of logical reasoning, 1 section of logic games, 1 section of reading comp, and kind of a 5th experimental section that didn't count towards your score, but it could have been any one of those 3 sections. The June LSAT exam, and like I said, the last 12 months have been on LSAT Flex, which means that they've only had 3 sections, 1 of each. They've had a logical reasoning, a logic games, and a reading comp section, right? That's it. 3 35-minute sections, no experimental sections, no breaks, and it's been at home, right, digitally on your computer. In August, they are switching to a 4-section test. So there'll still be 1 logic games, 1 reading comp, and 1 logical reasoning. However, there will be a 4th experimental section, and there will be a break. And I'm not exactly sure yet how that break is factoring in, but there will be a break. And so you want to be practicing at some point. If you know you're going to take the August LSAT, you want to be practicing with a 4th section, with the break where it's going to be, because I'm a big proponent of practice like you're going to take it, right? Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. If you practice poorly or you practice in a completely different way than the test is, it's not going to help you, because come test day, you're going to be like, oh, there's an extra section. I'm now more tired, or I'm flustered because I had 2 logic games in a row because one of them was experimental. You want to get in the habit of practicing exactly like you're going to take the test. I even tell people, if you know when you're going to take the test, back in the day, the test was always at 8 a.m. Take your practice tests at 8 a.m., right? It doesn't make sense to take your practice tests at 10 p.m. if you're never going to take the LSAT at 10 p.m. I want you to practice what kind of breakfast you're going to have in the morning. I want you to practice, where you're going to sit. Are you going to have the fuzzy slippers on or not? Are you going to have the fan on or not? I know that this seems really granular, but these kind of things will get your body into a muscle memory so that when it comes time to take the test, even if you're feeling a little nervous, you're going to be like, oh, this is exactly like last weekend and the weekend before and the weekend before. This is where I sit. This is what I wear. This is what I've eaten today. This is the time that I take my LSAT tests, and that will internally calm your body down. I'm also going to plug mindfulness, right? All of this is about kind of controlling the anxiety that comes up when we start to take the LSAT and that poor performance sometimes that happens, which is different from how we've been practicing. I did a video with my friend Grantley Neely at Granite Test Prep, and he has a fantastic course that is like $17. It's Mindfulness for Academic Achievement, and it's an 8-week course that will really walk you through how to use mindfulness and incorporate it into your kind of test prep situations, and it will help you be able to get control over things like anxiety and over all of those mental blocks that we have when it comes to studying or a lot of pressure. So I really recommend that as well. So I just wanted to let you know that if you're taking the August LSAT or the October LSAT, right, you want to be practicing with those 4 sections. You want to be practicing exactly like you're going to take the test. Absolutely a good timeline. I would be telling you, like I said, to take that diagnostic now, this weekend, this month, figure out what kind of test prep course you're going to use. A lot of them are 100-day courses for good reason, and then also see if you're going to use a tutor or not. Now, that's kind of the timeline for the LSAT exam. If you end up taking the November LSAT exam, you are going to be applying more on time, which is fine. That's fine. For most schools. For the highly selective schools, you want to be applying still early, but if you apply in November or December, it's fine. January, we start getting a little dicey. I start getting a little nervous. But the November test is absolutely fine for getting your applications in November or December. So we kind of covered the LSAT. The second thing is you want to make a timeline for securing your letters of recommendation, and really for all things LSAC. And LSAC is the Law School Admission Council. That is the hub of your applications. That is where you're going to do everything from apply to submit your transcripts to get your letters of recommendation. So, sometimes getting your transcripts sent to LSAC takes a little bit of time. You have to get all of your transcripts. You have to get your transcripts from study abroad, from if you have a degree from another country, if you took some classes at a community college but, then didn't transfer somewhere else. All of your transcripts need to be collected and submitted to LSAC. So I think that's really important for you to know that can take time. And if you're already done with school, there is no time like the present. So I would do that. Also this weekend. Generally speaking, it probably won't take more than a few weeks to get your transcripts in. But once the summer kicks in and everyone is sending their transcripts and everyone is requesting things to LSAC, they are going to start to get a little backed up. So right now, no one is really sending their transcripts. So this is a really great time for you to take the moment and send your transcripts, get everything in. If you need to call LSAC, this is also better because over the summer, hold times to get in touch with someone at LSAC can be ridiculous. So you want to be making sure that you're doing that. And also just to go back a little bit to when I was talking about your LSAT preparation and timeline, if you are seeking accommodations, whether that's for test anxiety, ADHD, dyscalculia, any kind of accommodations, you want to also start that process now because it can take some time. The deadline to apply for accommodations is the last day to register for the LSAT exam. So that means that you need to be talking to your doctors, getting your medical documentation. You need to get all of that together in time to submit when you submit your LSAT registration so that you can have the accommodations that you need. So if you're someone that's thinking that you might need accommodations, that's really another good plug for getting that process started as soon as possible. Now, for letters of recommendation, I usually say you should give your professors at least a month, but probably 2 months to write your letter of recommendation. And you want to make sure that you give yourself a month buffer in case something happens with LSAC and they have issues uploading it. So if I want to submit my application September 15th, that means I need to tell my recommenders that they need to try to have their letters uploaded to LSAC by August 15th, which means that I need to be asking my recommenders by June 15th. Right? You see how we kind of work backwards from when you want to apply. Now, this one is not quite as time sensitive right now because it's still in April, but some of you have not fostered the relationship that you need to with your professors. Some of you don't know who you're going to ask, and this is a good time to build that relationship, because if you're not asking till June 15th, that gives you about 2 months to set up a coffee or go to virtual office hours, connect with your professor, and then connect with them again. And then maybe on your third time you make the ask, or your fourth time connecting you make the ask. You have enough time to build stronger relationships with professors, and that goes for employers as well. Maybe you can take on a little bit more at work, or you can really be a leader in certain projects. You can try to make that ask as easy as possible when you ask. Not all of us have had like wonderful relationships with employers or professors up to this point, but you have time to change that. And so that's why I really wanted to include that in this segment, because some of you will need to be doing some groundwork right now so that when June and July come around, you can make the ask, you can ask confidently, and you know that it's going to be the best person to write your letter of recommendation. Now, I talk a lot about on my blog, on my YouTube, in the Essential Guide, how you go about getting a letter of recommendation. You can check it out in the guide. I talk through all the things that I would prepare for your recommender, the anecdotes and the information that they will need to write you a strong letter, what it looks like, a strong letter, and also a template for how to write your own letter if an employer asks you to draft it first. So all of those things you can check out in my guide. I walk you through the whole process because you don't want to just ask and then just hope that they write the right thing, because 9 out of 10, they're probably not going to. You want to help them a little bit and give them as much information as possible to make sure that they are going to write a recommendation letter that is going to really be impactful to admissions committees. And recommendation letters do mean a lot to admissions. Different schools, it means a different amount, but there's some schools that really value the letters of recommendation, and you want to make sure that you're submitting your best ones. Also, poor letter of recommendations can really hurt your application package. Now, speaking of your application package, that third point that I really want to talk to you about is your essays. And quite frankly, this is where I see a lot of students falter. They are so focused on the LSAT, and that makes sense. I understand the LSAT, of course, is such a large part of your law school application. But you're going to do yourself a disservice if you only focus on the LSAT. I was on a webinar a couple of weeks ago with a law school admission dean, and he was saying that, yes, LSAT scores were up. They were way up this year. However, he also said that the quality of writing that he saw in people's personal statements and diversity statements was down. Honestly, he was really disappointed in the quality of work that he was seeing. And so, he told pre-law advisors and the consultants that were on the call, don't be surprised if you have a student with a really high LSAT score who didn't get in. They might be confused, but you should have them look at the quality of their work. He said that they were really rewarding students that had strong application essays, strong application packages, and even if you had a high LSAT score, if your essays were not good, you were not getting accepted this year. And so I think that was really important for us to hear as pre-law advisors and consultants, but also really important for me to share with you, because I see this time and time again. Students so focused on their LSAT, and then when it comes to their essays, they just rush and they kind of throw it together, or they will invest in LSAT prep, but they won't invest in getting help with their essays. And you're really hurting yourself and shooting yourself in the foot, because sometimes what ends up happening is, even if you invest in the LSAT, we all know that things sometimes don't go as planned. And so if you spend all of your time prepping for the LSAT and all of your money prepping for the LSAT, and you still don't get the score that you want, what you would ideally have in that situation is still really strong essays, really strong letters of recommendation, and you would have been applying in September. However, oftentimes students still don't get the score that they want, but then they also haven't given themselves any time and any investment in their essays, and so they have not so great essays, and they're kind of applying late, and now they have a poor score. And it just really compounds into a really bad situation. So I really try to stress to my students that you absolutely need to be prioritizing the written application portions of your application just as much as you're prioritizing your LSAT exam, because they do look at your application holistically, and LSAT is a median, and how they're able to look at it holistically depends on when you apply, whether you're applying in September or you're applying in January, completely different. Remember, you can be the same exact applicant, same test scores, same essays, apply in September, get in with scholarship money, apply in February, get denied. It's really important that you understand the power of timing in your application process. But when it comes to your essays, I tell students it takes at least 3 to 4 months to create really strong essays all around. That's your personal statement, your diversity statement, any addenda, your resume, and any supplemental essays, YS essays, scholarship essays, all that good stuff, right? It takes at least 3 to 4 months. Sometimes people will come to me and they will want to wham bam the process and get it done in 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, that is not how this works. You might have something in 2 weeks, but you're not really going to have what you need. Even in my personal statement online course, I say that it takes 4 to 12 weeks to do that. You want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time. And even at the end of the 4 weeks, you're going to have a really strong first draft, but it's still going to need a second pair of eyes and all those things that take it from good to great. And so when we're talking about your application materials as a whole, getting all of your essays from good to great or from nothing to great, getting everything that you need, you're going to need 3 to 4 months. All right, so let's do that backwards, right? We're trying to apply in September. When do we need to start? Okay, so that's August, that's July, that's June, that's May. So I would say May, which is basically at the end of next week, is that minimum amount of time. Now, I work with students as early as even January for the September cycle, and I will tell you it makes a huge difference in where they get into school. It makes a huge difference in their acceptances and their scholarships, and also just the peace of mind and the lack of stress that they have. And I will also tell you that I only have one more spot left in my May boot camp. So we're now moving into the June boot camp, right? And that's fine. I have a June boot camp. I will have other boot camps throughout the summer that are going to be intense to make up for the time. But you'll see that some of the boot camps, they do end in October instead of September, because I do want to make sure that we're not rushing the process, and I want to make sure that you're giving your best foot forward. So what does that whole plan look like for your essay? So let's say you gave yourself 4 months to do all of the written components of your essays. You want to start with your brainstorming. When I do brainstorming, I help students brainstorm an entire universe of stories that can then be used for both a personal statement, a diversity statement, a why lot. I help you create a story bank, if you will, on the story matrix. That way, when it comes to writing and outlining, we can be pulling from the same brainstorming process, and that makes it go a little bit faster. But whatever brainstorming method you use, you want to make sure that you are thoroughly brainstorming, that you have crystallized your why law, and a clear why law statement needs to talk to me about what area of law you want to practice and who you want to help. And that you are outlining, that you are writing drafts. It takes, at least 3 to 4 drafts, probably 3 to 5 drafts, I would say, of every essay to get it truly great. And I'm very picky. So I'm going to tell you what it takes to have a phenomenal essay. I'm not going to tell you what it takes to have a mediocre essay or an essay that's just good enough. I'm going to tell you what it takes to have a phenomenal essay, because you should be expecting nothing less of yourself in this process. So it's going to take, at least 3 to 5 drafts of each, right? 3 to 5 drafts of your personal statement, 3 to 5 drafts of your diversity statement. You want to make sure that you are using all of the real estate on the page wisely. You only have 2 pages for your personal statement, 1 page for your diversity statement. You want to make sure that you're putting in the right anecdotes and the right stories. You want to be looking at grammar and transition. You want to be thinking about tone. Who are you talking to? What's the audience? You want to be thinking about just all the things that go into it, that you're showcasing the right things, that you're also being specific and not vague in your language. There's a lot that goes into workshopping your essays. So you want to make sure that you have the time to do that, and you need to set aside time to really write and time to get this down. The hardest part of an essay, I usually say, is the outline, because that's the structure of your essay. And if you don't have a good structure, you're going to have a trash essay. It just doesn't matter, right? You have to have a strong outline to have a strong essay. But then we really want to get into the grammar and fine tuning of it. And so, 3 to 5 drafts for each of your essays. Your resume, probably you want to have it looked over. If you're already coming from corporate world, it could look a little different from law school. Some law schools require different things on their essay, so you may need to tailor it a little bit. You also might have supplemental essays, so you want to leave time for that. You want to leave time for, let's say you're applying to Stanford. Well, if you're a strong applicant, you also want to be applying to the Knight Hennessey Fellowship Program, right? Because that's a full ride scholarship. Well, the Knight Hennessey program has a whole application process in and of itself. If you're applying to NYU and you're incredibly bright and you're interested in public interest, then you want to be applying to the Tilden Kern scholarship. And they have a lot of other scholarship essays. Those are separate applications, or separate essays, rather. If you're applying to Georgetown, you might want to write one of those optional essays. If you're applying to Stanford, they have optional essays. If you're applying to Yale, there's the Yale 250. There are a lot of essays, depending on where you're applying to. And so you really want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to do all of these things, to apply to the pipeline programs and access programs and outside scholarships. So this is not a process that I want you to rush or to think about rushing. And then, of course, we need to work on your addenda. So it's going to take you at least 3 to 4 months. So if we kind of do a summary of those 3 different areas, that first plan that I told you to make was an LSAT prep plan. And I said it's going to take you at least 3 to 9 months, which means if you're trying to apply in September, you want to have taken a diagnostic test maybe in January, but really as soon as possible. And then you need to give yourself at least 3 months, 3 hours a day to study, depending on what you want your score increase to be. When we're talking about letters of recommendation, you want to give yourself a 3-month time frame as well. 1 month in case anything happens with LSAC, 2 months for your professor to write your letter of recommendation, and then you might need some more lead time to build that relationship. It might take a couple of months to build the relationship before you even get to the ask, which starts that 3-month timeline. And then third, we talked about the essays, right? So it's going to take you at least 3 to 4 months to do the essays. We're talking about 3 to 5 drafts of each of your essays. There are optional essays, there are supplemental essays, there are scholarship essays. There's having a strong personal statement and maybe even tailoring the end of your personal statement to every school. There's a lot that goes into that. And so you want to give yourself at least 3 to 4 months, which means that if you are trying to do this process and apply in September, you need to start the process by next week for your essays, right? May 1. Now, of course, if you go into October and November, those are also still in that early time frame that I talked about. Your timeline shifts a little bit, but you want to be thinking ahead and preparing ahead. You don't want to just wake up in June or July and decide you want to start the process then, because you are going to be a little stressed, but it's still possible and you can still do it. But then I would strongly suggest, if you're going to start the process in June or July or August, that you have expert guidance walking you through to make sure that you're not wasting time, to expedite some parts of the process, to expedite the brainstorming, to, bring all the pieces of the puzzle together a little bit quicker so that you can still get your applications in November or December, so that you're not waiting until January to apply. Because at that point, you really are starting to change a little bit what the acceptances and scholarship money might look like. So, I hope all of that was helpful. Like I said in the link below, there is a free guide, an essential guide to applying to law school, which walks you through a lot of those steps. I also have a webinar, How to Gain Control and Really Maximize Your Law School Applications, that talks about the importance of timing and breaks down all of those different application components. As always, if you like this, definitely make sure that you rate and review, like and subscribe, so that you can stay up to date on new law school tips. I will see you guys next time.